Hey everybody, Cokeman 250 here, and I'm going to tell you the basics of putting new brake pads on any vehicle, pretty much. And let me give you a little background history here. When I was in high school, they had a VOTEC, is what they called it, and it was the area vocational school, and I took two classes in the morning my first year, my sophomore year. And then my junior year and senior year, I took 3 classes of automotives. And they pretty much just taught you the basics. And what the point they were trying to get across was, and the point I try to get across in most of my videos is, there's nobody out there that can't do this kind of stuff, okay? If you have hands, you can do it. I've put brakes on about lots and lots and lots of different vehicles through my life. And I'm a young man. But besides, what you're going to do, loosen your lug nuts just a little bit, jack your vehicle up, finish taking your lug nuts off, take your tire off, and after you get the tire off, there's going to be 2 bolts that you undo here on a caliper, and I'll show you when we get in there. But that's it. After you take the tire off, there's 2 bolts. That's all you have to take off to replace your brake pads. I don't know if you've ever priced a brake job. Front brake pads on most vehicles about $300. $300. Also, another thing is, when you go to the auto parts store and they try to sell you this very expensive brake pads and all this, I've used all sorts of brake pads. I fell into that trap of the most expensive brake pads they have. The thing is, you're going to replace brake pads on a vehicle in your life. If you keep that vehicle for 30 years, you may replace brake pads 4 times. Is that right? Maybe 6 times at the most, okay? And that's if you keep the vehicle 30 years. I'm gonna say brake pads every 5 years. I'm just going with that. That's pretty close, and I've driven longer. You know, it's kind of hit or miss. That's an average, I'm gonna say. The point I'm trying to get is, every time you go in that auto parts store, you don't go into an auto parts store very often, right? When you do go in, they want you to spend as much money as they can get from you, because they know you ain't going to be back for a while. Unless you drive an old Ford truck. I'm just kidding. No, we're not going into that battle, I promise. But the point is, they're not going to see you very often, and they want all your money they can get. So instead of selling you the $25 set of brake pads, they're going to try to get you to buy the $60 set of brake pads and tell you a bunch of jargon about they're going to blah blah blah, metallic, no dust, blah blah blah. There may be points to all that, but I buy the cheapest brake pads there are every time, and I get at least 5 years out of them. And I've bought the most expensive brake pads they have, and I get about 5 years out of them. I think 80, and don't quote me, you can Google it, I'm sure Google knows, 80 to 85% of your braking is done on your front brakes. So your front brakes are going to wear out. And I'm going to tell you this, I've had vehicles that I've drove 260,000 miles and never replaced the back brakes. Only replace the front brakes about every 5 years. You know, that's up to you what you want to do, but I'm telling you, don't let a mechanic or somebody tell you need all this crap you don't need. Don't fall into the lies of, we want all your money, okay? Because that's what they're doing. They do what they're supposed to do. They make money, okay? So those very expensive brake pads, they do what they were built to do, make money. But I'm going to show you the basics. This is on a Dodge Caravan. show you the basics. This is pretty much hit or miss on every vehicle I've ever done brakes on. There may be some fancy ones that I'm never going to do brakes on or never be able to own or care to own. That may be a whole lot different. But this is for your everyday Joe who drives anything that's sold at a car lot in most cities. Let's get into it. I'm going to take this tire off right quick and I'm going to bring you back with the tire off. Okay, want to throw in a little safety here and there too, okay? Use a jack stand. Now, let me see if I can get a shot of this. Okay? It don't have to be set down on the jack stands in my opinion, but put it real close. I always put it on the jack stand, lower it to the jack stand, and then jack it up about half a jack. That takes a little bit of the pressure off of one point, and then you have a kind of a fallback option as a jack stand. Now, you know, if you get hurt doing any of this, hey, I'm not responsible. I'm showing you, just giving you the ideas. This is how I do it, okay? I'm showing you how I do it, and this is how I save money. Now I'm gonna loosen these lug nuts the rest of the way off, and I'll come back to you. All right, so got the tire off. Once you're at this point, in my opinion, your hands, your feet, nothing should ever be underneath this rotor, underneath any of the fender well, except the time that you're loosening these two bolts. You can feel your rotor right here. As long as there ain't no grooves, or as long as it's smooth here, nice and flat and consistent, you don't need new rotors, okay? Don't ever let your brake pads get bad enough to do rotors. But rotors is only 2 more bolts than these, than brake pads. The only downfall is those rotor bolts get really hot. So sometimes you gotta heat them to get them loose, because they're on there. But let me bring you in right quick. This bolt right here, there's gonna be a rubber boot that gives. So this bolt, and then the exact same looking setup is on the bottom. It's not this. It's not this one. There's another one that looks exactly like this on the bottom. That's the only 2 bolts you have to take off. Just be careful when you're loosening these. Try to work. I always tighten a little bit first, kind of breaks them loose. Look, see? Only thing under here is my arm. Now I'm going to tell you this also. Scoot you over just a hair. Camera work's going to be not very good on this, but the point that I'm trying to get across is supposed to be better than the video, okay? If this thing starts to fall, move your hands back toward you as fast as you can. Don't try to save nothing. Don't worry about your ratchet. Don't worry about anything, okay? Because a new rotor, a new bumper, anything that's going to mess up is way cheaper than losing a hand, okay? So like I said, that other one is going to be at the bottom. It's going to be right here. Okay, you got your 2 bolts undone. Then your caliper. This is what the caliper is. Caliper is just going to come off here. I'll lay it right up here. Lay it right up here. Don't put a lot of tension on it. You got a brake line going to it. And then your brake pads are going to be in here. Replace 1 brake pad at a time so you remember. They look a little different. This back one here, see that little piece of metal? It goes downward. Right there. See? New brake pad, old brake pad. See? Big difference. Then you just slip, there's two little grooves. I'll show you on the front one better. Okay, kind of wiggle the front one out. See these little ears here? They go right in those channels, top and bottom. Line your bottom ear up, right there. This one kind of got to slide it in at an angle. Squeeze it together. It's new brake pads. Now we're going to mess with the caliper. It's one last step. I want to show you. Anybody can do this, okay? You're going to need a C-clamp. You take one of your old brake pads, stick it up against that caliper. See this? This is, your old brake pads need to press your caliper more to apply braking. The new brake pads are thicker, so it don't have to compress as much. So what you're doing is this is fully compressed almost. And what we're gonna do is take this C-clamp and we're gonna put it on there like this with your old brake pad. The old brake pad's gonna make sure it all goes in equally, and then we're going to tighten this C-clamp up, and it's going to press in that brake pad. And sometimes if you see a little bit of brake fluid leaking up under your engine, it's pushing air or pushing fluid back through that line, and it's coming out the top of your master cylinder. It's no big deal. You may have to add a little bit more brake fluid when you get done. Usually not. Usually if it leaks at all, it's very little. Just to press that in all the way. And then loosen it off. Take your old brake pad off. There it is. Okay, we got our caliper pressed in, I mean, whatever you want to call it. You want to slide your brake caliper back on, push that boot in a little bit. You're ready for your bolts. I ain't gonna lie to you, I didn't do a lot of this off of camera. Most of what you've seen done is on camera. So a man who's never done brakes can probably do a brake job, new brake pads on the front of a vehicle in about, I'm gonna say 2 hours. That's somebody who's never done it. We had a competition when I was in automotives in Votech, and I did a brake job in less than 15 minutes on one side. Actually, yeah, I guess it was less than 15 minutes. Put your bolts back in. Tighten them up. And you can hand tight most of the way.
Hi, Daddy.
Brake pads are done. Alright, so I'm gonna put the tire back on and we'll come back. Alright, so after you get everything back on, you're gonna get in. You're going to start your vehicle, and you're going to push the brake pedal. It'll go all the way to the ground, all the way to the floorboard. You let it up, you do it again. You let it up, you do it again. You keep doing that until it gets hard, and that'll push the fluid back in, and also depress the caliper, because there's a little slack in the caliper. You can see it moving. Well, it'll push it back down where it needs to be, and there you go. And what I always do is I take an extensive test drive with a lot of braking. You know, I start off slow, of course, in reverse, backing out of the driveway. I'll back up a little bit and I'll hit the brakes, like just stomp them. Then I'll do that 3 or 4 times, and then I'll get out on the road. I'll do it at 5 miles an hour, and then I'll get up to about 10 miles an hour, and then I'll get up to 15 miles an hour, and then I'll pull out on the road about 40, you know, make sure nobody's behind you, and then I'll get it up to about 60 or 70 miles an hour, you know, because you're going to want it like you're going to be on the interstate, and then test those brakes. So, but yeah, I've already test drove it. Everything's good. My wife's actually drove it. I finished this about 3 hours ago, and I just come out here to put the end on this video here. But yeah, there's nothing to do in a brake job, guys. This is how I do it, and I'm nothing special, okay? So if I can do it, anybody out there can do this, you know. And tell you the truth, I truly, with tax and all, because you know, all I did was put new brake pads on. Brake pads were probably about $27. That's tax and all. So I saved myself over $270 by putting brake pads on myself. Anyway, now I got to get off here and go spend that $270. This Cokeman 250 from the land of the free and the home of the brave. God bless everybody. And remember, prep smarter and pray harder. So